We are live with R&B superstar Matt George. What's going on, brother?
R&B, nah, that's soul music, baby. Well, everything was all soul with my "Don't Need Luka" song. But what up, Leo? I appreciate it. It's good to be back on the CK podcast. It's been a while.
Man, I really missed you, man, and I'm gonna be straight up with you. I loved your voice in it. I don't know if you went T-Pain on us or if that was just your beautiful vocals, Matt.
I tell you what, there's a lot of editing. There's a lot of editing involved in that. There was. I mean, there. So the programs that I used Adobe Audition for it, and there's an auto pitch corrector, and I had to auto correct the pitch corrector. Basically, I had to correct myself about 6 times for it to sound that sharp. But add a bunch of reverb, you sound like a gospel choir, so it's all good.
Okay, so before I ask you questions on how you approach the song, I want to play a little soundbite of it so the fans that are watching this can have some context. So here it goes. Don't need Luka. No, the Kings do not need Luka. I've seen all of his highlight plays. I knew on almost every game, but man, is the West just so cruel. Dallas playoffs are a dream. Kings are on up a 500 team with Fox, Hield, Marvin Bagley, but not Luka. That last line hurt me. I'm not gonna lie, Matt, but it's okay. I loved it, and it should definitely have a lot more views and a lot more love because I feel like you put a lot of work into it. So with that said, talk about the process, your approach to it. How did you just come up with this idea, and like who helped you execute it if not yourself?
So initially, when I initially saw the Ringer's Halleluka video, which is fantastic, by the way.
Love it.
After with the one line in there, which is actually at the beginning of the music video, the baffling Kings took Bagley over Luka. I knew it was a kind of a fun but veiled shot at the Kings, right? So I filed that in the back of my brain. And I thought if there's ever a time where either the Kings got a big win over Luka and the Mavericks, or the Kings were doing a lot better than the Mavericks, I'd clap back in some sort of fun way. The object was never to go viral or to stick it to the Mavericks or stick it to the Ringer. It was just fun banter. Everything is done by me. I wrote it, I recorded it, I edited it, I shot the music video by myself. I recorded everything. Basically, I'm my own studio, and I'm lonely, which is everything you can basically sum into one there. But I had a lot of fun doing it. The object of it was, like I said, it was just to have a good time. And if anything, this came only a couple days after, once again, the Luka Doncic versus Marvin Bagley debate sparked up on Twitter. And I've been a part of that debate and that conversation many a time, to the point where, like I said in one of the lines of the song, it's becoming a little bit of a bore. I also said in the song that both teams are very happy with their guys. I think what's happened is best for the NBA. I love what Luka's doing in Dallas. I think he's a phenomenal rookie. I think he is going to win Rookie of the Year. He's definitely the front runner for Rookie of the Year right now. And then the Kings have a player in Marvin Bagley who, if I honestly believe, if he didn't get injured for that 13 or 14 game stretch, that he would be starting over Nemanja Bjelica right now. I think that's coming in the very, very near future. And he's contributing to a team that's overperforming and that is over 500. The whole point of me making the song was to kind of put a fun spin on the debate and put it to bed a little bit by poking fun at the Phoenix Suns. That was just a fun dig it was completely unnecessary, but I enjoyed it.
I love that ending too. I'm like, poor Suns, they have nothing to do with this, and you still got them.
So now it's their turn. See, I threw a shot at them, not so veiled. Now someone from Phoenix writes a song about the Atlanta Hawks, and it just keeps going. We're going to go through all 30 teams.
Love it. Love it. You just mentioned something that some fans have been commenting on social media, especially on our platform on Instagram, and that is Marvin Bagley potentially starting.
Yeah.
Now, both you and I know the pros and cons to that. We have these discussions all the time off the record. Do you really think
he should be starting over Bielitsa, knowing that he's not a guy who can stretch the floor yet, and it'll kind of be counter intuitive for De'Aaron Fox, knowing that he has two rollers in Willie Cauley-Stein and Marvin Bagley, and not really having a threat from out there.
See, I was more concerned about that initially until I've seen recent success with Marvin Bagley and Harry Giles. You could argue neither of them are good at spacing the floor. Neither of them really have majorly different skill sets, but they seem to work well together, at least offensively. Now, in this most recent game against Charlotte, I thought the Kings forced it to both of them a little bit. Harry Giles had a bit of a regression game, a tough game, so I know that was a tough pill to swallow for him. Marvin Bagley still turned in a good performance, but turned the ball over a lot, especially in the second half. But I completely understand the argument, and for the most part, I actually agree with you. I understand why Nemanja Bjelica is in the starting lineup, and I also understand that being a starter is completely ceremonial. You get the announcement at the beginning of the game, which is fun, which is something you live for as a professional athlete. But Marvin Bagley has played more minutes than Nemanja Bjelica in I think each of the last 3 or 4 games. And Bjelica, I'm not saying that his role is diminishing or that he's losing his spot per se, but Bagley has been providing good minutes and Bjelica hasn't. Bagley is providing more rebounding and defense than Bjelica does. And quite frankly, right now, Bjelica's not shooting the ball all too well. So I understand why Bagley's getting more minutes.
Another great and interesting point that you just made is Harry Giles, playing Harry Giles and Marvin Bagley together. I feel like, in my personal opinion, both of them have worked better than a Willie Cauley-Stein and the Marvin Bagley, because Giles has that extra skill set, and he's a very gifted passer, and that opens up everyone else's game, which helps Marvin Bagley just roam around in the rim, knowing that at any point Harry can just hit you on stride. But they're also playing, if we use context, they're also playing against other bencheteers. Now, if you start taking that and you start implementing that with other starters, can they have the same type of success right now?
I don't know. I think both of them provide something that not too many bigs in the league can provide for this Kings team, and I think it has a lot to do with rim running. Willie Cauley-Stein has gotten a lot of praise from his teammates and from head coach Dave Yeager specifically because of his ability to run the floor and his ability to cut to the basket. And he does a lot of things that don't necessarily show up in the stat column. Now, unfortunately, what does show up in the stat column is his lack of rebounding at times, definitely his lack of block shots. You could say that Bagley and Willie Cauley-Stein are almost even in that sense. To answer your question in a really convoluted and roundabout way, I like pairing Bagley and Giles together more because of the energy that they bring. And I also believe that that's going to be the future front court of the Kings going forward. At least I think that's the long-term plan, regardless of what the Kings decide to do with Willie Cauley-Stein this summer. If they sign him to a 1, 2, 3, 4-year deal, who knows what they do. But if they sign him to a deal, he's got to understand that in the not so distant future, he would then go to a bench role, because I know the plan is for Bagley and Giles to take over as that front court. So why not have them play together when they're young? They seem to play well together. They feed off one another. They talk about, or Bagley talked about after a recent game, how it's healthy competition between the two to grab rebounds, to block shots. So I like it. And I if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep them on the floor together.
I agree with some of that. My only concern is defensively. Both Harry Giles continues to get lost. He looked lost the past game. Even Marvin Bagley had about 3 plays where he just looked really bad defensively. I don't trust them enough, and both you and I know that Dave doesn't trust them enough to start them together. But I understand that they are the future front court of this organization. But with that said, what type of things can Harry and Marvin do together and start improving in those little areas on defense?
Well, first and foremost, Marvin Bagley's growth defensively from the California Classic and Summer League to now has been, I think, pretty remarkable. We talked about Marvin Bagley's biggest weakness coming out of college, being his defensive play. And then we know that Duke at times had to adjust to a 2-3 zone to hide Bagley on defense because he just struggled to rotate. He struggled to find himself and put himself in the right spots, and he wasn't able to use his freakish jumping ability and athleticism to become a rim protector, to grab rebounds, and really make a change defensively. He's already adapted that in the first few months of his NBA career, to where I think his lateral quickness is up across the board. I think he's improved as a communicator. He still gets lost at times on rotations. I agree with you there. So does Harry Giles. But we've also seen growth from Harry Giles in terms of the biggest gripe that we had against Harry so far this season has been his inability to stay out of foul trouble. Now, this recent game against Charlotte, again, he regressed. He ended up fouling out of that game, which was disappointing. But the best games that we've seen from Harry, which was over that 3-game win streak stretch at home, was him being able to stay on the floor and being able to get meaningful minutes because he wasn't fouling out. He was getting into a rhythm. You were seeing that passing ability that we've heard so much about. So I think a lot of it is just correcting the major mistakes. The major mistake for Harry is guarding with his hands a little bit too much and getting into foul trouble. The biggest mistake for Marvin Bagley at times is getting lost on rotations and being left out on an island. So if they're able to work on those and focus on those and fix those, then I think the other things will start to come around.
On that note of fouling out and being in foul trouble, DeMarcus Cousins made his debut tonight about 30 minutes ago. He played about 5 minutes. He got a nice dunk, quick 2 fouls. Do you see him messing up that chemistry in terms of playing his role on offense? Because both Iman and I have been breaking a lot of film sessions after every game. And that day when the Kings played the Warriors, we saw that Kevin Looney just plays an exceptional role. He literally knows what to do, and that's always screening towards the baseline, either on the right or the left. And I feel like DeMarcus Cousins is the type of ego that says, no, you got to give me the ball in the post because I'm DeMarcus Cousins. I'm an all-star. I'm not a role player. Will it work out in your eyes?
Yes, I think it will. I don't see how the Golden State Warriors get worse from having DeMarcus Cousins on the floor. DeMarcus Cousins, regardless of any issues that the Kings had with him or that he had with the media or issues that he still has with Vlade, the Kings front office, regardless, he's still an all-star caliber player. I think it was devastating that he suffered this injury last year because he was having a phenomenal year with New Orleans Pelicans, but I also don't necessarily believe that it's a coincidence that the Pelicans improved and got better with just Anthony Davis over DeMarcus. You know it. We've talked about it before. I don't think DeMarcus can be a number one guy anywhere. But I think with Steve Kerr, with that offense, with Draymond Green in his ear, with Kevin Durant, he can ease his way back into things. He can provide quality minutes and a lot of scoring and rebounding and some size down low that they don't have. He's also been working on his three-point shot like crazy so that he can space the floor with that Warriors team. The thing I'm most interested to see with him is how well he fits into when the Warriors try and play that fast-paced offense, and if they elect to sub him out of the game, play Draymond at the 5 or Durant at the 5 and go small and keep him out of that lineup. That's what I'm most interested in. But I think Boogie will completely benefit from playing with Golden State. I think the Golden State Warriors will find a way to maximize him without making him a number 1 or even number 2 guy. And honestly, I think he's going to win a ring in Golden State, and he's going to use that ring and use his cap or his free agency and his name and his all-star ability to get a massive payday this summer. He'll go to maybe another team and become the number 1 guy, and then we might see what we've already known, that he'll regress back into he struggles to lead a team to the playoffs because he just, I don't think, can be a number 1 guy in this league.
That's kind of what I was alluding to, where him playing in that specific lineup with those 4 all-stars, can he be that Looney? Looney understands his role. He's there to set screens, grab rebounds, block shots. I don't know personally, and I don't think DeMarcus can accept that role because knowing him and him being here for so long, it's his ego and his stature as a player is way too big.
And if I can I just want to cut you off really quick because I want to jump in on that because that's you brought up something that I forgot. If it's not going to work here, if his ego gets in the way with this team, it's not going to work anywhere else. And I think he knows that. I think his management and his agency knows that. So I'm sure there's been probably some talkings to and some messages sent, especially from maybe even the Golden State Warriors organization themselves. The bottom line is if DeMarcus Cousins can't accept his role with a championship team in Golden State that does not need him, they know they don't need him. He knows they don't need them. If he can't accept a third or fourth guy role there for a chance to pretty much be handed a ring, it's not going to work anywhere. I think he knows that.
I hope he knows that.
I think he does. I think DeMarcus has always been a smart guy. He has an ego and he has a temper, but DeMarcus is a smart guy. And I think he recognizes the benefit for him in Golden State and the benefit for the Warriors in Golden State. It's a mutual partnership for a year. I help you win another ring. You help me get paid this summer. That's what it's been all along.
So do you buy into any of the rumblings of him possibly staying another year in Golden State?
No. It doesn't make sense. I mean, he just saw his career nearly fall apart, and his reality, his career flashed before his eyes with a horrific injury right before he was expecting a massive payday. He's not going to want to risk another year in Golden State for, I mean, once you have one ring, he's not chasing Kobe's legacy, right? He's not chasing even Curry's legacy. He's not chasing Michael Jordan. If he wins one ring, he's already won more rings than some of the biggest names in NBA history, and especially one in Charles Barkley, which you know how much he and Charles Barkley love each other. He gets bragging rights over that, and most importantly, it gives him even more of a bargaining chip to get paid this summer. I think DeMarcus is going to take the money and the opportunity to be a number one or number two guy somewhere else over staying in Golden State. Easy.
It's funny you say that about Charles because it seems like every show on TNT, Shaq is always giving him a hard time about not winning a ring. And then yesterday with next to Kenny Smith, Charles pretty much said, "Well, on this side of the table, we have 2 rings," and everyone just broke out laughing because those 2 rings are Kenny's rings, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So, do you see the Thunder, the Nuggets, or the Rockets having any chance against a healthy Warriors team?
Out of the 3, I would give the Thunder the best chance.
Wow, even after last night's debacle?
Yeah, I like the Paul George versus Kevin Durant matchup, and I think they legitimately can play good defense against one another. I like Steven Adams and his ability. Let's assume DeMarcus Cousins remains healthy and is a centerpiece or as a big man for the Warriors. I think Kevin Adams or Steven Adams rather, sorry, can provide. Yeah, Aquaman, Jason Momoa, whatever the hell his name is. He can provide a lot of size against DeMarcus. Steven Adams has frustrated DeMarcus in the past to the point where DeMarcus almost, you remember this in Sacramento, he almost turned and swung at the back of Steven's head, but he stopped himself at the last second. Thank God he did, because that would have been horrific. But Steven Adams can get under his skin, so I like that matchup. Russell Westbrook, I'm a big Russell Westbrook fan. I don't think
he's been struggling though, bro. I mean, he's shooting terribly. He's kind of reverting back to old Russ, but he's not, because his usage rate is actually down this year. So that means he's trusting Paul George a little bit more. He's trusting Schroeder a little bit more. But at the same time, if you're shooting 20% from 3, that's not going to get it done.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think anybody in the West has a chance to get the Golden State Warriors again. I think they're that good. If the only hope we have really is the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference and Kawhi Leonard staying healthy. But out of the 3, I would say the Wizards
Bucks? No Bucks?
I don't think the Bucks are making it past Boston or Toronto. But the Denver Nuggets, I love the Denver Nuggets. I love Mike Malone. I think he has them playing very, very well, but they lack experience, and you're going to need experience to beat the Golden State Warriors. And then the Houston Rockets just aren't that good. Like, I don't trust that Chris Paul can stay healthy. James Harden has made a career off of getting to the foul line, and that does not win in the playoffs. He's not going to get 20 free throw attempts a game in the playoffs. He's just not. And that team has gotten worse defensively. They got rid of Ariza. Even though Clint Capella is still there, that's good. But in my opinion, they've gotten a whole heck of a lot worse than they've gotten better this summer. James Harden is still a phenomenal player, so I think it would be interesting. They may get a game or two, and they were really close with a healthy Chris Paul. But I don't think anybody in the West is getting back or past Golden State.
I know we're both Kings fans, but objectively speaking, a healthy Lakers squad with an inspired Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Kyle Kuzma with the LeBron James, how far can they go? Because that nucleus is pretty exciting when they're clicking on all cylinders.
If you have LeBron James, you always have a chance. So I would say Western Conference Finals. Even if they're playing inspired and LeBron is playing well, LeBron has been victimized by the Warriors in the past. And I mean, LeBron's shown capability to carry carcasses of teams to the finals before, but that was in the East. Welcome to the West, LeBron. You can't just carry a carcass. Not saying that the Lakers are a carcass by any means. I think Lonzo Ball is still an effective player. I know he's kind of a scapegoat here in Sacramento. We like to poke fun at him and his lack of a jump shot.
He's really good.
I think De'Aaron Fox is a better player than Lonzo Ball, but Lonzo does what he pretty much needs to do with that Lakers team is run the offense. He still passes the ball really well, and defensively, he's not a liability, which is always good to have a non-defensive liability point guard in the NBA. That really helps.
He's a much better defender than De'Aaron Fox.
Yes, I would say that. Brandon Ingram is inconsistent, but has the capability to take over games. I love Kyle Kuzma's game. I still think the Lakers need a center to be any kind of legitimate threat to the Warriors. But as long as if they were playing inspired and LeBron James was still LeBron James, then I'd give them a chance to make the Western Conference Finals. But they're not getting past Golden State.
That's fair. That's fair. So it's not crazy to think that they can make it to the Western Conference Finals, because last time I checked, LeBron James took that scrub Cavs team last year to the finals, and I believe this nucleus of the Lakers with Tyson Chandler and some of those veterans are better than that Cavs nucleus that they had last year. Would you agree with that?
No, the Lakers this year with LeBron are better than the Cavs last year with LeBron. The Lakers this year with LeBron are better than the Cavs. Well, maybe not. They might not be better than the Cavs the year they won their finals just because Kyrie was there. Right. But no, I would say so. And a lot of that just has to do with the pieces that LeBron has around him. Yes, they're young and they also lack experience, which I think is really important. It's kind of a toss away, throwaway statement, but I think playoff experience is crucial for young teams, which would be if the Kings made it and they snuck into an 8th seed or 7th seed, they'd probably get swept, or they might get one game. And the biggest thing that they gain from it is experience that they could take into the next year. Playoff experience is something that can't really be measured, but it is extremely valuable, because you, myself, everybody who watches playoff basketball knows is a whole different beast to the NBA regular season.
One last thing on the Lakers. Kyle Kuzma, does he remind you of Buddy Hield in year 2, where he has tunnel vision and he's a great scorer, but in year 3, you can potentially see the growth that Kuzma can take as an overall player? We know Buddy Hield has taken that next step this year, where he's a lot better facilitator now. He can dribble a lot better, where last year he was always ball, let me shoot. And I feel like Kuzma has a lot of that, and he's a great scorer, but he's still missing those fundamentals.
Buddy Hield is having a better season than Kyle Kuzma is right now, but I would still say in the grand scheme of things, Kyle Kuzma is ahead of Buddy in terms of development. What I mean by that is that, I mean, this is the expected sophomore slump. He had a fantastic rookie year. A lot of teams didn't know how to handle him. Now going into the second year, there's more scouting reports on you. They've seen you before. They know how to handle you a little bit better. Typically, players that have really good rookie seasons regress a little bit. Even Donovan Mitchell, he's still putting up the same scoring, but he's not. He and the Jazz have not been nearly as effective as they were when he was a surprise to everybody in the league last year. So I'm not concerned. I wouldn't be, if I was a Laker fan, I wouldn't be concerned one bit with any of Kyle Kuzma's regression. I expect him to be able to grow and work through it. And if anything, I think this is a good opportunity. He showed his ability to score the ball last year. He also showed that ability to score the ball against the Kings not too long ago. But if I'm Kuzma, I recognize, okay, other teams are adapting and recognizing that I can be an offensive threat and are treating me like that. Let me do things and let me show development in other areas: rebounding, putbacks, hard screens, my ability to pass the ball, even rim protecting. If he can grow in those areas during this sophomore slump, going into next season, I think sky's the limit for him. I think he's a future All-Star. He's that good.
He is that good. Do you think he's better than Brandon Ingram long term?
Yes. I mean, it's hard to say because Ingram's I thought Ingram would really benefit from LeBron being here. And in a way he has, but Ingram is still very inconsistent. Kuzma in one
he's
year
21 though.
Yes, he is. And he's still young. Like, that's the thing. We're having conversations about 21.
Kuzma's older. He's like a year and a half older.
Yeah. Right. But you can see it. Kuzma's been bigger and has shown up in the big time for the Lakers over the past couple seasons, way more than Ingram has. I don't think that's necessarily a gripe against Ingram. That just, to me, says that Kuzma's more ready for that spot. I trust Kuzma more than I trust Ingram right now, but I still think Ingram can be a hell of a player.
Would you trade Buddy Hield for Ingram?
No. I would not. The way Buddy Hield is playing, I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at that. But Buddy Hield this season I get age is a thing. 26 years old to 21 years old is important, an important thing to look at. Right. And small forward versus shooting guard. But I think you have a drop off if Buddy Hield, let's say this trade happened today in the next game. There's a drop off between Bogey and Buddy as the shooting guard. Buddy is 2 times or 10 times better of a shooter than Bogey is. And I'm not.
I don't know about that one, man. Yeah. I don't agree.
No, I love Bogdan. I love Bogdan Bogdanovic. Don't get me wrong, but I'm taking Buddy 10 times out of 10 on a knockdown catch and shoot 3-pointer over Bogey. I think Bogey is capable of being a good shooter in this league, but Buddy Hield, the growth that he has shown this year from last year and even the year before, his ability to not just catch and shoot, which he was a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter last year, but now his ability to create his own shot. Also, he's added the backdoor cut to his game. Buddy Hield is the leading scorer for this team. And De'Aaron Fox has had a fantastic leap as well. And I totally agree with the statement that the Kings will go as far as De'Aaron Fox takes them. But if De'Aaron Fox was playing this well and Buddy Hield was averaging 10 to 11 less points per game, I honestly believe the Kings would be 10 games under 500. Buddy Hield has been that big for this Kings team, and he, in this year, has shown me that he is more capable of being a leading scorer in the NBA, a go-to scorer, and a knockdown 3-point shooter in the NBA over Brandon Ingram so far in his career. That's why I'm taking it.
Well, if Buddy Hield was averaging 10 points a game, I don't think he'd be starting. I think Bogdanovic would be averaging 20 points a game. Is that crazy to think?
Bogey last year, my biggest gripe against Bogdan Bogdanovic last year was I wanted him to shoot more. I wanted him to try and score more. He tries to be a lot of a facilitator on the floor, which is why I think he works so good with this Sacramento Kings second unit. Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee actually tweeted out an interesting stat yesterday that with Bogey leading the second unit, he's played 25 games as the leader of the second unit off the bench. And in those games, the Kings are 24-1, as in 20 wins, 4 losses, and 1 tie, as in the bench has tied with the opponent's bench. I think Bogdan Bogdanovic is very important for this team. I love him in his role off the bench, and he's still on the floor when it matters in crunch time with the Kings lacking some small forward depth right now. I'm very okay with how it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think Buddy Hield is a little bit more important to this team offensively than Bogey is, but Bogey is crucial for that second unit.
Now, before we start talking about some of the names that have been mentioned, rumored to the Kings rank, I believe, 28th the last time I checked in points allowed, but they're a top 5 team in points scored. And I've been saying this for about a month now. I feel like the Kings need to get a player that can help them lower from 28th to at least 19th. But for me, that magic number is 17th. Do you feel like if they get to a 17, 18 points allowed per game, they can make the playoffs? Because right now it's way too drastic. They're the worst defensive team, but they're such a great offensive team.
And we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that in the games recently. That the Kings have had these stretches where they just go ice cold, and it's so puzzling because, the Kings had a 13-point lead in the second quarter against the Hornets, and the second half they went ice cold. They fell apart. We've seen it before. The Kings will lead for 3.5 quarters, get to the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, go to isolation ball, and their shooting percentage drops from 55 to 42. It's insane how this team goes on cold streaks at times, but that's what happens in the NBA, and good teams are able to supplement that with defense. The Kings just don't have that right now. If the Kings, I honestly believe this, because they're not that far off of having a positive differential, points differential in the game because of how much they score. If they held opponents to, I think they give up 114 points per game or something like that. If they held opponents to 110, 109 points per game, I honestly believe this is a playoff team. Offensively, they've shown enough to be a playoff team. It's defensively where they still stub their toe at times. So yes, I agree with you. Yeah,
well, they're the only relevant above 500 team that has a negative point differential.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the NBA 2018-2019, right? And we knew that was going to be an issue for this Kings team. Honestly, they're better defensively than I expected them to be. A lot of that has to do with Iman Shumpert. I think Iman Shumpert deserves a whole hell of a lot of credit for the player that he's been this year. I certainly did not expect this of Iman Shumpert this year.
Nobody
and also
did.
he's shown flares offensively that are fantastic. He's also a phenomenal locker room guy, a great on the floor and off the floor leader. So I love Iman Shumpert. I would sooner I would consider, if I was the Kings, trying to find a way to bring back Iman Shumpert on the cheap for another couple of years. Maybe not as significant of a player role as he plays right now, depending upon what they do this summer. But I like Shumpert with this team as a leader and as at times floor general. But other than him, and Justin Jackson has also shown great growth as a defensive minded player too. But De'Aaron Fox doesn't turn on the defensive ability a lot of times until the final 5 minutes of the game, which I think is disappointing. Buddy Hield, I thought, showed growth as a defensive player towards the end of last season, and now he's back to being not so good of a defender. I think the Kings' perimeter defense is dreadful. Bogdanovic is part of that as well. And that makes life difficult for the bigs down low. Willie Cauley-Stein is not a good shot blocker. I don't like his excuse that he's hurt his hand and hurt himself on the rim trying to block shots in the past, although I understand how that could be a little bit of a mental block. But it's not an excuse for me, but also he's left out on an island a lot of times to where he can either contest a shot from a guard that's blown by the perimeter defense and leave his man wide open for the dunk, or he could not contest the shot and get in a place to rebound just in case the guy misses. So there's no second chance opportunity. I think Bjelica, Bagley, Giles at times are left out to dry by the perimeter defense. It's going to start on the perimeter because the Kings are going to continue to get torched by three-point shooters.
We can literally go an entire podcast just talking about their defense and the lack of communication and how Garrett Temple is so missed in that area, right? But let's talk about some of the names that have been linked to the Kings. Jeremy Lin, Enes Kanter, Bazemore, Otto Porter. Let me
Harrison Barnes.
Harrison Barnes and Nicholas Batum. Do any of these guys, for you, in Matt George's opinion, will they move the needle if the Kings would bring them on? And as I've said to fans multiple times already, if you bring in a guy like Kanter, it's gonna take an adjustment time. It's gonna be a difficult transition because they don't play with the Zebo type player. He's very skilled offensively, but it's not like 2K where you just insert a player and it works out magically. It's gonna take some time for any of these players to come in into this new offense, into this high-paced offense, and just implement their skill set with everyone else's.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Enes Kanter would be a interesting acquisition. I wouldn't hate it for the Kings. I think he helps your rebound issues right away, especially if the main piece that you're trading for him is Zach Randolph, who doesn't play anyway. But then you deal with the issue of where the hell do you play him? Does Costa Kufos lose his minutes? He's already losing his minutes to Harry Giles right now. Does that mean Harry Giles is bumped out? Is Willie Cauley-Stein bumped out? Well, I don't think so because Willie runs the floor too well, and the Kings like to play fast. Enes Kanter can't play fast. So I think Kanter is interesting. There's such a logjam at that front court. It's a good problem to have for a coach, to have a lot of players that you want to play and have to pick and choose. But honestly, if the Kings traded for Enes Kanter, that most likely means Harry Giles is getting pushed back again. And I don't know how much they want.
Does that move the needle, though, for the Kings?
I don't think Enes Kanter on this Kings team gets them to the playoffs. I think Otto Porter does. I know a lot of people are scared away by Otto Porter's contract, but not Otto Porter, the player. Otto Porter is exactly what you need if you're the Kings. Someone who can space the floor. No, he's not a go-to shooter. There's a reason why he's the number 3 option in Washington. He's not paid like it, but he is the number 3 option in Washington, and he got that contract by spacing the floor and playing defense. Hello, I'm the Sacramento Kings. I need both of those things, Otto Porter immediately comes in and helps with your perimeter defense. Oh, yeah, he's a true 3, which the only guy that you have that's that is Justin Jackson. And as good as Iman Shumpert has been pretty much on a nightly basis starting at the 3, he's about 2 to 3 inches shorter than the average position. It's pretty devastating, and you see a lot of that have an effect on the rebound battle. Dave Yeager's pointed that out. I think Otto Porter coming onto this team, yes, there would be an adjustment period, but if the Kings manage to trade and acquire Otto Porter, which I think as we get closer to the deadline, his asking price is going to come more and more down because the Washington Wizards cap situation is a absolute nightmare. And they're not going to get rid of Wall because they probably can't. I mean, his salary jumps up ridiculous over the next couple of years. And they're not going to get rid of Bradley Beal because Bradley Beal is a star in itself. They're going to have to get rid of Otto Porter and Mahimi. And I think the Kings could use both of those, but definitely could use Otto Porter. The asking price would probably not be as high as it normally would be if the Wizards did not have a horrible cap situation and weren't a little desperate. So if the Kings would be able to acquire Otto Porter without trading away Bogey or without trading away Giles, I don't think they do that in the first place. The worst, let's say, the worst name that they traded away in that trade was Willie Cauley-Stein. Like that was the best player that the Kings gave back. I think, honestly, still the Kings would make the playoffs with Otto Porter. I think he would help the team that much right away. It wouldn't necessarily show up in the scoring column, but I think he exactly fits the bill of what the Kings need. And quite frankly, the money doesn't worry me anyway because the Kings have a boatload of cap space going into this summer, and we know how free agency works with the Kings. The Kings have a distinct advantage right now of cap space, and nobody else does. Come this summer, almost everybody has space because everybody's recovering from the terrible TV contracts of a couple of years ago. So now they're going to try again. You want to try and get in a bidding war with the Los Angeles Clippers for Tobias Harris, you're probably going to lose. Or you could acquire Otto Porter right now when you have leverage over the Wizards and you're in a playoff race, and I think he helps you right away.
I don't know if he gave up Willie Cauley-Stein, though, because Willie's been very important to the Kings. And if you give up Willie,
I agree.
It's addition by subtraction, and you don't want that. You have to try to give up just one of your guys, like your expiring deals. At worst, Iman Shumpert, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because Otto is a clear better player right now at his age than Iman Shumpert. Make no mistake about that.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And again, I love Iman, but Iman can't do what Otto Porter can for this team. And I think we would see an immediate effect with Otto Porter here. You also brought up Harrison Barnes, too. I don't know why I've never been attracted to Harrison Barnes. I just haven't. I get what he brings, and I also think he fits the mold to some extent for the Kings. But I would prefer Otto Porter over Harrison Barnes every day of the week.
What about Batum?
Batum, veteran. I like him. The only reason I would want to acquire him in a trade is if somehow the Kings were getting a first-round pick from Charlotte involved in that trade as well, which I don't think would be the case because I don't know how good Charlotte expects to be if they expect to be an under 500 team but make it to the playoffs, which is garbage that they're able to do that in the Eastern Conference. But hey, welcome to the NBA and how the conference system works right now. Nicholas Batum, I don't think gets this team over the hump. I like him. I think he's a great player, but I think his best years are behind him. I think he would add great veteran leadership to this team and can also space the floor at times. But Nicholas Batum doesn't move the needle much for me.
And the last one is Jeremy Lin and Andrew Wiggins. Do any of these guys move the needle for the Kings?
Andrew Wiggins, I like, but he's so inconsistent that I can understand the fear of paying him or wanting to take on that contract. But I do like Andrew Wiggins. I think he is capable of being a damn good player and he could help the Kings, but would he expect to be the number one option? Coming to Sacramento, we all know that wouldn't be the case. Jeremy Lin, not a bad option in terms of getting some point guard depth off the bench, which I think the Kings need. Frank Mason, inconsistent. Yogi Ferrell, inconsistent. I think Yogi plays better as a off-ball 2 anyway, but he's pretty undersized as an off-ball 2. Defensively, he and Frank Mason are both atrocious with that second unit, as are Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox for the most part with the starting unit. I think Jeremy Lin's, he's not a phenomenal defender, but he helps with that a little bit. I wouldn't mind Jeremy Lin coming off the bench, and I don't think you'd have to give up much to get him.
But in your opinion, both guys don't move that needle, and and make it.
If this roster stayed the same and you traded Zach Randolph for Jeremy Lin or Scalabrine for Jeremy Lin, nah, that doesn't make this team a playoff team.
To me, that's more of an insurance policy. God forbid De'Aaron Fox gets injured, because then, in my opinion, a healthy Jeremy Lin is a low-end starter, in my opinion. And if you get a low-end starter to be your backup, then you'll be all right. But then that would also mean that you're not going to make the playoffs for sure.
Yeah,
right?
No, and the way De'Aaron plays, I'm terrified of an injury too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's hurt his shoulder in the past. He actually says that he's playing at 100% right now, which is great. But De'Aaron Fox is the modern Gerald Wallace. I mean, he spends more time on the floor than he does on his own 2 feet, and that's just because of how hard he plays. And I love that. But over an 82-game season and potentially playoffs beyond, it is pretty terrifying. It is a little scary, even with Jeremy Lin here. If De'Aaron Fox goes down, the season is done. So
now it's January 18th. I know all Kings fans that will listen to this or listening to it right now, they want a Matt George prediction, a bold one. Will the Kings make the playoffs?
Oh, honestly, my watching this team and enjoying this team as much as I have, I honestly think they will. I really do. I really think they'll squeak their way in. That being said, I don't expect that. There's a big difference between a prediction and an expectation. I think the Kings have shown enough this year to make it, to sneak in. I think at best they're an 8th seed. I think they're going to be in the conversation, in the hunt down the stretch. I also think a team or two is going to regress. Hopefully it's not the Kings. We'll have to wait and see there. And because I also think they're going to be buyers and they're going to do something at the trade deadline that both fits their desire to make a playoff push and their long-term developmental goal, which is why I think Otto Porter makes so much freaking sense, because he's also young. He's not all that old either. But before we go back on that tangent, but my expectation was that they win more games this year than they ever did with DeMarcus Cousins, which is 33 games. They're going to get that unless the season goes to absolute hell, which it won't. They're going to get that. And they honestly are going to push 40 wins, I think, this season, which is a monumental success. If I had told you that the Kings would win 40 games this season at the beginning of the season and miss on the playoffs, we probably would have thrown a parade in Sacramento. It would have been that exciting. So to me, the playoffs are a cherry on top. If they can get there, great. If they get there, I expect an early exit. It would be so awesome to see playoffs in the Golden One Center, 1 game, 2 games, even if it means a sweep. You know, even if the Golden State Warriors come into town and smash us by 40, all I'm thinking about is the pregame introduction sequence and tip-off and how loud that building is going to be and how much celebration there's going to be that this team made it. And honestly, I legitimately think they have a chance. And I think if they continue to play it the way that they've played through the first half of this season, I think they'll squeak in and they'll steal the 8th seed.
Now, I made the prediction after that bogey game winner that they would make the playoffs. And the more I think about it, I was just like you when I thought, let's just enjoy the season, guys. They're winning. We haven't won in 13 years. But now the more that I think about it and the more perspective I get from watching this team, I think it will be very disappointing if they didn't make it. And I say this with context because this team is good enough and talented enough, and they score a lot to make the playoffs. So now it's not like, oh, I'm happy they're playing well. No, now it's like they need to execute because they have the right talent, the right pieces, and the right chemistry. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, I think they have the offensive talent to make it. I think they've shown that. They've been able to stick in and be competitive against every opponent so far this season. I mean, they've had their few stinkers every now and again. They've had collapses, which you're going to expect from a young team. But, I mean, let's put it this way. They've had 3 meetings with the Golden State Warriors. Yes, they're 0-3, but all 3 of those games, the Kings legitimately could have won, and they should have won 2 of them. In the first game, it came down to a rebound, which was horrific. The second game, Kevin Durant and the Warriors went full Golden State. In the third game, though, which the Warriors won by the biggest margin and looked the best, I guess, against the Kings, they had to put in the lineup that they used to close out NBA Finals. And they had to guard Buddy Hield like he was LeBron James because they had that much respect for the Kings and what the Kings could do. If the Kings can do that consistently against the Golden State Warriors, I think they can do it against the Rockets. I think they could do it against the Thunder. I mean, they've beaten the Thunder twice already this season. I know, again, the regular season's a lot different from the playoffs. I'm not saying that they beat the Thunder or the Warriors or anybody in the playoffs, but the Kings have shown that they can be competitive with anybody on any given night because of their offense. They add a little bit of defensive consistency to that, and I think they've already grown as a defensive team from the start of the season. This season, it's still not nearly where they want it to be, but there's been development, there's been growth. But offensively, there is enough there for them to compete and be a playoff team.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want to hear, Matt George. I appreciate you coming on, brother. And I apologize to the people that were on this stream for about 2 hours.
Yeah, my fault.
On me.
No, that was my fault. That was me. That was me. He's been blowing up my phone for the past 2 hours. See, now that I've released a song, I became a diva. So I released my song. It went right to
top
radio.
100 right there, man.
Right to radio. So now so that's going to cost you. We'll work out a negotiation when we get off here of how much you're paying me for this. And then where's my room temperature tap water? Let me get my wife on that. No, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, guys. And don't forget, if you guys want to go to a concert, to a Kings game, to any NBA game, make sure to use the code COWBELL on SeatGeek.com to get $20 off. That's right, guys. $20 off your purchase.
And come by, say hi too when you come.
Absolutely. Any final words? Where can people find your work? Any plugs?
I'm going to be hosting the Grant Napier Show next week on Thursday with my guy Jay, so you can check that out from 3 to 7. It'll be a full show next Thursday. All of my work is on KHTK.com, but you can check out all the articles that I write after Kings games or any stupid music videos that I release. The Locked On Kings podcast, would love to have some of your listeners, if they don't listen to the podcast already, at least come and check it out. I host it, and we do everything there on that podcast network to try and make as fun of a podcast and Kings conversation as we can have, just like they do here at Cowbell Kingdom. So check that out and just be part of the conversation, man. This is just as much about you Kings fans as it is us. And if I've ever fought with any of you on Twitter before, I apologize, but don't be so stupid at times too. I know I can be stupid as well, but let's chill out and let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Kings are 23-22. We never expected that. This has been a fantastic, phenomenal year. Head coach Dave Yeager deserves all the credit. And anybody who says that head coach Dave Yeager is a bad coach, you will get blocked or you will be called an idiot every time. Sorry.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me, because that was one of the topics that should have been the main topic of the show. Real quick, both you and I have had conversations about the whole Twitter. You're a lot more active than I am, because I'm a lot more active on Instagram. That's more my platform.
Right.
But it seems like every time I'm on Twitter and I have my own take, like, for example, the guy from ESPN 1570 locally, Whitney, I don't know his name, but he said that De'Aaron Fox would have been DSJ in terms of trade rumors, and that would have been him because of the whole Luka thing. And I responded and I said, that's absurd. And then you had two other people chime in and say, well, you're not always right, Leo, and I don't like how you're so condescending with your attitude. And I'm like, bro, I just gave you my take. Like, at what point is it a double standard where just because you and I are media personalities, we don't have a right to express our opinions and our feelings towards a certain topic? Like, at what point do we say, you know what, screw it, I don't care what you say? Because I just saw what's her name, Katie, tell a guy that I'm gonna kick your ass, or this big woman will kick your ass, and it's like, okay, it's not professional, but that guy deserved to be called out like that. So at what point can we express ourselves without being name called, like, oh, we're condescending and we have an attitude? Like, the last time I checked was when you text someone, that be girlfriend, wife, fiance, brother, sister, mom, a lot of things get lost in translation when you text.
Yeah, no, you're right. And what's interesting with media personalities at times, and I think fans don't understand, that we're also human beings too. That being said, we try and approach things with hopefully more professionalism than fans do. And sometimes we're guilty of being triggered or I mean, we have tempers, we have frustrations just as much as anybody else does, right? So I like to believe that we try and hold ourselves to a higher standard. That doesn't mean we're better than anybody else. This is what I say on my podcast all the time. First and foremost, I grew up a diehard fan of the Sacramento Kings until I got the job. Actually, I started as an intern at KHTK. That was almost 4 years ago. And then I have the job that I have now. And over those 4 years, I've grown to be able to sit in the media section and interact with people that I looked up to, read, and listened to growing up as a kid. But that being said, up until that time, up until 2012, up until 2013, I was in those seats. I was at those games. I would have been at every single Golden One Center game I could have been as a fan if I didn't have this job. I am just as passionate about this team as you are, Leo, as these fans are. And thankfully, in this planet, in this world that we live on, you can disagree on something and not hate people. I know some people are incapable of that. If we disagree on something, then we can't be friends at all and we can't be cordial towards one another. And that's unfortunate. And I've had interactions with people like that before. And I'm not going to be naive and say that I haven't added gasoline or fuel to the fire at times. I'm guilty of that just as much as anybody else is. But the reality is, if you come at a media personality of any type with stupidity, you're going to be called out for stupidity. Now, you can come out with a legitimate take that I disagree with, and it could lead to a good argument and a good conversation without becoming personal, which I think is fantastic. And I can be wrong at the end of the day. I can be proven wrong, and I'm man enough to admit that. It's the people that, and I wrote an article on this for KHTK.com called Getting Rid of Abusive Fan Culture. It's the people that think that they have a right because either they cover a team or they watch a team or they pay money to see a team to be abusive, to be just straight cruel at times. And I'm not just talking about boo a player all you want. I have no problem with you booing a player if you're frustrated with them. But cussing at them, spitting at them, tagging them on Twitter, or even not tagging on Twitter with an F you, or you are a soft piece of crap, or every time Dave Yeager makes a mistake, it's Dave Yeager needs to be fired, or what happened this summer, Vlade Divac needs to be run out of town. He's an idiot. He's a terrible GM. Like, all of that is just way across the line. And to me, that's what gets under my skin. That's what boils my blood. So I'm going to speak out against that. Sometimes I don't necessarily do it in the right way, but ultimately, overall, we're people too. We want to interact with the fans as much as possible. That can lead to great things, but we also know Twitter, we know Instagram, we know social media, we know what kind of cesspool it can be. That can also lead to bad things as well. I love my job. I love the people that I get to interact with. I am just as much of a Kings fan as every single one of you out there. But I have my own opinions. You do too. And just because I am a radio host, a media personality, a podcast host, a journalist, that does not exclude me from being able to come back at you and tell you when you're wrong.
Very well said.
In my opinion.
Very well said. We'll end it there, man. I appreciate you coming on, brother, and I appreciate everyone that watched us live, that interacted live. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
See ya.